So I just got done beating Bloodborne, and there's a lot of people out there who think they know what's going on, but they don't, and I'm here to explain why. So let's begin. Well, you're clearly sleeping because you're in a dream, so you don't have to worry about dying, which is good because you'll do that a lot. Your dude goes to an old city to get healed of some disease. It never tells you what it is, so you have to assume the worst. Probably diabetes. Or leukemia. So we know we're dreaming because a psychopathic werewolf doctor tells us everything we're about to see is in our heads, right before he starts a blood transfusion.
You may think it all a mere bad dream.
I'm not sure where he went to medical school, but I sure would have liked to have seen his license. Anywho, you wake up in 18th century London fighting werewolves and frankenbeasts like a regular old Van Helsing. At this point, you don't need much story. Werewolves are bad, you're supposed to kill them. For the first few hours, you fight a lot of cool bosses, but the only notable one is Father Guest Th4m4dh4tter, an elderly gravekeeper who you assume is like you, until he says the coolest line in anything ever.
Beasts all over the shop. You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
You suddenly realize you could never be that cool, so you dice him up like a tomato and take his clothes. After Gasket gone, you fight Bitcher Amelia. I call her that because she's a real bitch, like an actual female dog.
Yeah, bitch! Magnets! Oh!
Anyways, you down Bitcher. It's on to the Forbidden Forest. You know, the one from Harry Potter. You fight the ring wraiths from Lord of the Rings, and I don't think it's very original to rip off landmarks and enemies from books, but that's just me. After you do Frodo's work for him, you arrive at Burgerworth. You don't find burgers, but you do decide to go for a swim. It's a moonlit lake, so can't really refuse. Instead, it's not a lake, and this is where the story takes a turn for the worst. You dive into the lake at the word of an old man in a wheelchair. Instead of coming up refreshed, you land on solid ground, a trap laid out by Rom the vacuum, to stop the eager skinny dippers from having too much fun. See, Rom's a fun vacuum. He tried to suck up all the fun, but he ended up sucking my instead. I killed Rom, an overweight potato squid, during a blood moon. Your character clearly never noticed before because he stares at it for a while in a cutscene. Anyhoot, you look around to escape Rom's trap, only to find a recent abortion patient. She must have went to the same doctor I did because he did an awful job.
Well, you've come to the right place.
After swimming, you find a kindred spirit, Mikolas. He's clearly also gone insane trying to figure out this story. After a rousing game of tag, you attempt to remove the crab trap on his head. It was stuck on there pretty good, so Mikolas suggests using your saw cleaver to cut it off. You oblige, but due to your character's illness, he's got pretty shaky hands. After renewing your senses as a lone wolf, once again, you decide to address one key issue that's been bothering you, the crying baby that's been heard this entire time. Your character isn't a kind person, so it drives him crazy. You approach his carriage only to realize there was no baby. It was a clever trap laid by Final Fantasy creator Th4m4dh4tter. His copyright infringed ring wraith is covered in belts and zippers, clearly the edgy hipster of the Bloodborne bosses. You do what anyone would do when trolled by the sound of a crying infant. You murder Murgo, who's obviously wet from swimming in the aforementioned lake. To throw salt on the wound, you also eat Murgo Jr.'s umbilical cord. After finding Murgo and ending his family line, you return home, only to find your house burnt down, and your father, German, gone. You find German in the garden. You look to him for fatherly advice. The literal Japanese translation of the advice he says, and I quote, "If you can't handle the kitchen, get out of the heat," end quote. You pull out your CD player and let German listen to Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars.
Funk you up, Uptown funk you up.
He has his answer. Then he says the second coolest line in anything ever.
Tonight, Gammon joins the hunt.
So after killing your own father, you discover the truth and what I was worried about all along. The last boss descends, and lo and behold, a space squid. The moon presence. Without asking a single question, it grabs you and tries to make you pregnant. You reject its advance. Not one to be rejected, the squid attacks. You've had a lot of practice cutting up squids in the second half of this game, so you make quick sushi out of this joke of a boss, and get one final cutscene. The squid's not dead. In an Edge of Tomorrow ripped off storyline, you now have to start all over again.
Oh, good hunter.